Oh, yeah, the battle out west is taking place here shortly. First game, you'll see Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and Mr. Hart as opponents of the Lakers. That's where they began, and now they are gone. And then the Lakers, we already know what's going on with AD. He was once on the way, now he's there, playing very well. Now what you're going to do now for your viewing pleasure is going to bring you in Powell to the people. Shaun Powell joins us from the West Coast. Now, we talked about, we just saw AD and we just saw Brandon Ingram, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We want to talk about Zion. We want to know what's going on. We saw him out on the floor working out earlier. You got to witness him up close and personal. What are your thoughts? What did you see? And is there a chance that they maybe bring him back a little sooner than we're thinking?
Well, it was the most watched pregame 3-on-3 workout that I've ever seen, maybe in NBA history. I think you had reporters out there, you just had witnesses out there, you probably had Pelicans personnel just crossing their fingers. Look, I mean, obviously, Zion Williamson means a lot to the franchise. He's coming off an injury. Originally, it was 6 to 8 weeks. They pushed it, a little further ahead. He had his first workout. It wasn't really like a full-scale workout because practice was light. But there's no timetable on when he may return. So therefore, the Pelicans still are taking it easy with him. You can understand this is a guy who blew through his sneaker at Duke. This is a guy who averaged 23 points a game in the preseason. This is a guy who's about 6'4", 6'5", and he's got some weight on him, and he's explosive. So, and obviously he's a number one pick, and he means a lot to the franchise. So therefore, they're going to take it easy with him and bring him back when they feel he's ready.
Well, I mean, there shouldn't be any added pressure. However, we know the Pelicans haven't been great, but just looking at the standings, they're only 3.5 games out of that last spot in the Western Conference. So they're playing well. They've won a number of games in a row. I mean, maybe they're trying to ride that wave, and maybe there's no chance they rush them back into the lineup, though.
No, they're not going to rush him back, but you brought up an interesting point. They were 6-22 at one stage. Now they've won 5 out of their last 6. They're 3.5 back from the last playoff spot. I mean, here's a guy who can come in and just really energize the team. I think that the Pelicans are in a very curious situation here. With the trade deadline approaching, are they sellers, are they buyers, or do they stay put? I think it all depends on how they see the rest of their season. Do they want to make a playoff push and keep everything intact? Do they want to see this team with Zion? They haven't seen this team with Zion yet. So this is sort of like a crossroads for David Griffin, who for some reason, by the way, left the NBA TV family to run the Pelicans. Can you believe that? But yeah, I mean, this is a test. But I think this franchise is ready for some good news, ready to win, and I suspect they'll probably try to make a push for it if Zion is healthy and ready to return.
Yeah, I can't believe that, David Griffin. How dare he leave us here at NBA TV to go to the great city of New Orleans. But speaking of New Orleans, Brandon Ingram, we know he didn't get that extension at the beginning of the season. He's only responded with career highs across the board, especially in the scoring department. He had a little something to say about his contract situation, used some choice words that we can't necessarily say on this family program. But what have you seen so far from Brandon Ingram, and what are your thoughts on what he had to say about his potential of securing the bag?
Well, about the contract situation, they basically couldn't come to a deal by the deadline. You can understand the Pelicans situation. I mean, he had the blood clot health scare with the Lakers last year, and they really hadn't seen him since then. But, look, Buddy Hield got his money. Jaylen Brown got his money. Those are the guys in the same draft class. Also, Ben Simmons got his money. And so I think, based on what we've seen so far from Brandon Ingram, I suspect the price is definitely going up. This is a guy who's in the most improved player competition right now. He's averaging 7 more points a game than he did last year, 3 more rebounds than he did last year, and more importantly, he's sort of a go-to guy late in games. He can create off the dribble, create his own shot, shooting like almost 42% from three-point range. So he has done his part. He has improved as a player. He has improved as a leader. and as a go-to guy. So, everything is going right for him and also going right for the Pelicans. Basically, there's a guy who's playing for money and coming through.
Coming through indeed, especially over the last three. He's shooting 58% from downtown, which is scorching. Last season, he played with LeBron James, who is in year 17. It's crazy to say that, just turned 35 years old, and he is still playing some of the best basketball ever. This season, those assist numbers are way up, doing something we've never seen him do before. And you recently wrote a piece about what he's been able to do with those assist numbers.
Well, what the craziest thing is, in the best case scenario for LeBron James, good health and all that, he could finish as the NBA's all-time leading scorer and number 2 in assists. I mean, that's insane when you think about it. But this year, he's the only player in the NBA averaging double figures in assists, right around 11 a game. And this is an era of the NBA ball where, it's iso ball. So it's harder for players to get double figures in assists. And LeBron stands alone in that situation. And I think deep down he wants to lead the league in assists because it's sort of unconventional for a power forward to do so. And that's one more thing that he would have over Michael Jordan also. But more than anything, there's two reasons why his passing is up. Number one, he's a good passer and a willing passer. Number two, Anthony Davis is on the team, and that's sort of a way to make Anthony Davis feel comfortable, to sort of, that bond between the two. He wants to make sure that's special. And LeBron feels that the Lakers are better off with him being a distributor. So it's all coming together for him. These passes that he's throwing, across court, finding players deep in the corner for threes, bounce passes in the paint for traffic. It's really amazing to see up close how a guy who's like 6'8", 255 pounds or so can make those pinpoint passes. With the exception of Larry Bird, I can't think of another player that size who's been that efficient with the ball and finding teammates.
Yeah, LeBron wanting to lead the NBA in assists just to prove a point. I remember a certain Wilt Chamberlain wanting to do the same thing back in his heyday, and he definitely got it done. Well, that's enough for you right now. I know you're struggling right now in Southern California. That's a tough task that you have. So you go back to struggling out there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Shaun Powell, everyone. How impressive is it? Now, we've seen LeBron do pretty much just about everything, whether it be scoring, rebounding, hit big-time shots in big-time playoff games. However, him leading the NBA in assists and doing it the way he's doing it in year 17, how impressive is that to watch?
It's extremely impressive. And I had a conversation with somebody once about 5 years ago. I said that if LeBron wanted to transition into this phase of his career better than anybody else, he would be a guy who basically played point guard. He was such a gifted passer from the start. The first time we ever saw him play for a lot of us is when he was in high school, playing with his buddies and setting them up to look like stars. That part of his game to me is the most natural that comes with LeBron James, physical and skill repertoire. But for him to do it now at this stage of his career with all the miles he's gotten, out of his body, that beautiful basketball brain LeBron is always talking about, just being able to see the floor and see things before they happen, to create now as the facilitator for the Lakers, to me seems like an ideal position for him to play. But it's also one that gives him the chance for the most longevity. If he wants to keep playing, another few years, this is the way he does it. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. Whether he can jump over people or physically bully you out the way, he's a matchup nightmare with the ball in his hands and being the decision maker the way he has been for the Lakers.
You're a smart man. That's it. No, really, that's exactly right. You may lose half a step or a step of quickness. You may lose some inches on the vertical jump, but your skill level, your ability to pass the ball, you may even lose the shooting a little bit because legs are a big part of this. But the passing will survive, and it can go on for a long time. I think he's always been a pass-first guy who could average between 25 and 30 as a pass-first guy. But he's always been a pass-first guy, so this is really a natural progression for him. And then he's got great finishers. Like, you don't get assists if the guys miss. Let's remember that, okay? So he's now got Anthony Davis, and then he's got two guys who can catch lobs on dunks in Howard and McGee. And then he's got good perimeter shooting that hasn't been great so far, but we know historically, Danny Green, KCP, those guys, Kyle Kuzma, should shoot the ball well enough from three that it makes it a little easier for him to rack up those assists.
LeBron James impressive. I go back to his rookie year, the first game against the Kings. He had an assist before he scored his first NBA points. Speaking about another rookie who's yet to play his first game, Zion Williamson. We spoke about him earlier. We saw him out there practicing. Well, not practicing. We saw him out there getting a workout in before the game tonight. He's not going to play, so don't get too excited just yet. But I posed the same question I posed to Shaun Powell. We see that the Pelicans are just 3.5 games out of that final spot. What type of decision is David Griffin going to make? Is there a lot of pressure on him to make a decision for him maybe to put him out there on the floor, number one, so the fans can see him and maybe compete for that final spot? Or is he going to be more cautious looking at the long-term situation?
It's both. He is feeling a lot of pressure to play him. There's no question. The fans in New Orleans want to see him. The fans nationwide want to see him. We want to see him.
Fans all over the world want to see Zion.
Everybody wants to see him. And so David Griffin knows that, and he's feeling that. And David Griffin's also a very smart guy and understands how valuable this guy is. I'm reading David Griffin's comments, and he is talking about both the injury being healed and what Sekou was talking about, which is him being in prime condition. And David Griffin and Alvin Gentry know if they send him out there before he's really in shape, his chances of re-injuring himself go way up, especially with anybody, but especially with a guy who plays with the force of a Zion Williamson. So I think David Griffin will withstand all of that pressure. He'll stand up to it and say, no, we're not putting this guy out there until he's physically ready. And that doesn't just mean healthy. It means optimally conditioned.
I think there's an opportunity here for the Pelicans and for David Griffin. They're going to have a situation on their hands here shortly, depending on what happens with an organization that's near and dear to the heart of the ownership in New Orleans. If the Saints could get on a Super Bowl roll, and I know it sounds crazy, but they would take so much of the attention and pressure off of Zion's comeback or debut that it would allow maybe another couple of weeks for David Griffin to make sure Zion's in some of that tip-top shape. You know, you got ownership of both franchises, in the same hands. So I wouldn't put it past anybody down there to be thinking strategically in terms of when Zion actually plays. And you know what's crazy about it? We always look at markers in a season, Christmas or, the trade deadline, whatever. An exact time for Zion, you think you want it to be before All-Star Weekend or before the trade deadline. I think optimally, if he was to come back and play after the All-Star break, that would put no extra pressure on him, because by then we'll know if the Pelicans are still within range to chase a playoff berth. But then you don't put this extra added sauce on Zion's plate where you're asking him to come back and be the guy that puts you in that position, which I think is more than you should be asking for from a guy who's yet to play his first game.
But look, I'm sure David Griffin, they would love to be in the playoffs for this reason. We saw what happened in Brooklyn this offseason. And one of the big reasons that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving selected Brooklyn is they saw a team that was already winning games and a playoff team that they could impact. And I think as you go into it, they want to show free agents both this summer and next, hey, we've got something good going on here. This is a place to play. But he was not going to sacrifice Zion Williamson just to make a run at